We are really privileged to have one of our clients who was prepared to give some time this morning to just come and chat with Keith. Keith has worked with Spar over the last 4 years, and I'll hand back to Keith to introduce Mike and just have a conversation about that.
Thanks, Graham. As Graham mentioned, we are getting increasingly excited about a role we can play not only in the delivery of content but in the architecture of leadership development programs across the board. Graham and I were just informally chatting before we started this morning and trying to add up to what extent we are between us involved in international leadership development programs, and I think we came up with something like 25 different programs in close on 50 countries just in the last 12 months, with leading international business schools and sometimes directly with clients. And what that translates to is an awful amount of experience in looking at how programs are being done, what they're good at, what they're not good at, what the general approach to them is, etc. And I have been involved in what I regard, in spite of that milieu of experience, perhaps the finest leadership development program, and it's Spar's. And I'm going to ask Mike to come on up and join me. It's a program that has been running for several years, and I'll let Mike fill in some of the details. And when I say the finest because of its design and how it's evolved, the willingness to trust outside voices, and a number of things. And so, Mike, again, thank you for joining us. Mike heads up the academy at Spar. He's a very, very busy man and oversees a multiple leadership development within Spar. But, Mike, I want to talk about the one that we've been invested in and worked hard at for the last 4 years, which is known as the SLDP, the Spar Leadership Development Program. Why don't you just give us a bit of understanding as to what the components are that make up the SLDP?
Perfect. Right. Can everybody hear me? Good morning, everyone. It's really a privilege. Thank you very much for the invitation to showcase what we are doing in our association, our proud association with Tomorrow Today. The program essentially is a 12 to 14-month program that focuses on developing the individual, so leading through who you are. And that was fundamentally a philosophy that was introduced to us by Tomorrow Today at the beginning of what we put together. Essentially, the components of the program is 4 blocks of approximately a week each, spread out over the year, supported very strongly by integral coaching and independent coaches that we contract to the program, and as well as mentoring, and then also our social media component, which is headed up by Tomorrow Today through Mike Saunders, which then makes sure that people are engaged throughout the 12 to 14 months. The power of this program is really in the design, because what we decided to do from the start was not to go with a whole lot of content. To develop the leader from within, we decided to do an experiential program, a program that focuses on developing your capabilities and EQ capabilities, and we used Goldman's EQ model for that and a whole lot of other models. But instead of content, we went with models, we went with some parts of theory and experiential development. And that's where Tomorrow Today has played a significant role in the design and architecture of the program. So that in a nutshell.
Mike, tell us a little bit about the metrics. What I see as one of the unique features of the SLDP is that most programs that we're involved in certainly do evaluations. That's a very different thing from measuring and having a very specific measure as to what progress is being made.
Absolutely. For us, we've just done a whole lot of research on the impact of this program and what it's actually had for our business. And out of Goldman's 18 competencies on the EQ, have seen significant growth in 14 of these particular competencies. And we achieved that through the architecture and the design of the program. It's an emergent program. So when we start at the beginning of the year, and I must say the uniqueness of this program is that I'm 1/3 part of the team, Keith forms another part of the team with Anne Varmenhofen, our psychologist, and we have another coach. So there are 3 people that are external to my facilitation team and myself from inside. And that unique approach has allowed us to really glean what's happening in the world of work. And because of the international exposure that Keith and other people have out there, it allows us to design on an almost moment-to-moment basis. We'll sit sometimes and design a block and redesign that block 3 times over in the same day. And that's just because of the power of the intellect in the room and the exposure that people have had. And we will design a program that is with intent and purpose, and that speaks to what's relevant for our business at that time and for the leaders at that particular time and what they're going through.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that because, again, many programs, you might be having a block or a module 8 months from today, and you know exactly what's going to happen on day 3 in that module at 2 o'clock, because that's how they get sold. Clients want to know with some kind of certainty, but in an emergent program where needs differ, where things are shifting so quickly, you have to be willing to be more flexible and nimble than that. And Spar's willingness to trust that process and respond appropriately is what I think makes it very unique. The one other aspect, Mike, I want to ask you to elaborate slightly on is when you talk about experiential, we do horse whispering as one aspect, but tell us a little bit about the emergent experience that, again, I think is so profound in terms of its impact on the delegates.
The emergent experience is really about what is going on right now with, within our own business, within the context of South Africa, within the context of the world, and Africa, obviously, where we operate as well. And we use all this input to design specifically for a particular block. Obviously, our approach is not just, okay, well, what's coming up, but there are underlying themes and practices that we make sure that pull right through the program as golden threads. So adaptive intelligence. How do we design a process around adaptive intelligence? And this is where the expertise of emergent development come from in design and architecture. So we would put together an immersion which takes people out of their comfort zones. And when we're looking at developing empathy, for example, is, well, how do we actually understand how other people operate? And we'll take people into the heart of Zululand and actually engage in traditional experiences, engage in, you know, you'll sleep in a traditional hut and do what traditional people do that morning. We've gone into townships. We've gone into one of the cornerstones of our learning is around horse whispering and reflective practices. Again, very much stuff that is not, you don't find typically in theory, which business schools, in fact, actually would encourage too much. And with respect to business schools, they have their place. But we just find that working with what is important here and now gives us the power and the flexibility to design a program that really, really works and is very powerful.
I always try to make sure I'm in Mike's small group because he's fluent in Zulu, which is a big help, but I haven't managed that yet. And again, one of the differences, we're involved in a top international business school who also do an emergent experience, and we have the privilege of doing it in Istanbul and Buenos Aires and Moscow, etc. But it's different. It's very controlled. It's very ordered. There's a big enough group to make it very safe. And so although it is emergent, I don't think it goes anything far enough. And maybe that's a bit of a unique South Africanness as well, the willingness to tolerate discomfort and be a bit edgy, because that's where the real learning sits. The place of our deepest learning is often in the deepest valleys of our lives, personally. And I think leadership development programs have to be willing to allow delegates to go there, and it might get messy and a bit chaotic and a bit disruptive, but if it's in a safe container with good facilitation, that's the place of our deepest learning, as opposed to sitting in classrooms and hearing content. So keep that in mind. Mike, one last question. What do you think has been the role that Tomorrow Today's played in this whole process? It would be great to hear from you. And I've asked Mike to be authentic and honest. There's no script here, but you know, Mike, follow the script.
I had to laugh at Graham. He said Frieslands instead of Frisians. So yeah. Frieslands are cows. Yeah, that was pretty good. But the reason why I mentioned that is not to take the mickey out of you, but
yeah, please do.
is really about my first engagement with Keith, and that goes back some time now. And he very cleverly left a book on my table called Lessons Learned from Children, I think, the one that you wrote. And I'm not a great reader, I must admit. I have to force myself to do that. And I read this book and I couldn't put it down because there was such rich context for what I was looking for at the time when it came to leadership development. It talked about horse whispering, and I was like, what is that? And talked about reflection and having a journal. I mean, like, that's for sissies. And and we're in retail, we're tough, we sell baked beans. I mean, we don't have time for this nonsense. And it really is. It was for me a real eye opener to see, well, what is leadership development about? We wanted something different, wanted something unique, and these ideas started to come out of that. And when engaging with Keith after that, I started to realize that I can really benefit by having him on my team. So Keith is there full time, for example, during the blocks. Even if he's not doing a physical presentation, he would be observing, we would be gauging what's going on, what's happening to the group. Are they up, are they down, are they turning left, are they turning right? And we handle that in the moment. And we often pause processes to actually unpack what is going on. And that's very powerful. So the role that Tomorrow Today has obviously played from a contextual perspective, bringing that information in has really been of a huge benefit. But it lies in the design and the creativity that these guys have got in running a very, very professional program, and helping us really and challenging us and pushing the boundaries. Often go back to our senior guys, and they're very sort of like worried about the kind of edgy stuff that we do, but they trust the process, and that comes from a long association of, we know what we're doing, we're experts in this area, and we've got enough pool of different resources to make this actually happen. So the benefit of this association for us has certainly meant that we can put ourselves on the map when it comes to leadership development. And just the brains in the room is really, for me, the power and the creativity, the expertise that comes with that. So for you out there that may be considering who to partner with, who to look at in terms of leadership architectural design for your organizations, for your teams, certainly I would highly recommend looking at Tomorrow Today from an all-round perspective.